Tonight, we begin our look at some critical issues facing Minnesota farmers, some of whom could be looking at their last harvest.
They find themselves on the front lines of a trade war with China. And with harvest set to begin in just a few weeks, many will have to make some tough decisions. Tom Lydon is here with a look at how soybean farmers are coping. Tom?
Kelsey, Randy, it is hard to underestimate how much is at stake. Before the trade war, Minnesota exported nearly $2 billion in soybeans, much of that going to China. That market has all but evaporated, leaving Minnesota bean farmers caught in the middle of a superpower standoff. Step into a soybean field just outside Northfield, and you can appreciate how powerless a farmer like Brent Fuchs must feel.
These beans look good. If it was the 15th of July, it's the 15th of August.
Late to plant, he'll be late to harvest.
But fill those pods.
You know? They're not really formed. They're kind of small and sort of weak.
If a killing frost doesn't beat him to it.
If those pods aren't developed, if they're not round bean in there yet, and that freezes and that plant dies, it's done. It's not going to make a bean.
Farmers know they can't control the weather, but that's not all. For the last 2 years, they've also become pawns in a high-stakes geopolitical chess game between the U.S. and China.
3 of every 10 Minnesota soybeans end up going to China. If you take that out of the equation, that's 30% more production that we don't have a home for.
You know, we've been hurt by China for 25, 30 years. Nobody's done anything about it. And we have no choice but to do what we're doing.
Every time there's another announcement on a delayed trade negotiation deal or whatnot, we're seeing the market slide again.
The agricultural commodities market is what sets prices for corn and soybeans, the raw material for the cheapest food in the world. Those prices dipping with every headline and every tweet from President Trump about tariffs. Even news that China will make a large purchase of soybeans next month brought little relief. There is still no trade deal.
We've worked pretty hard to develop that market in China, and it's certainly something that we do not want to lose at this point.
Chris Kalis grows 500 acres of soybeans near Zumbrota.
We're luckily we haven't got an early frost this year, so
His beans need a couple more weeks, and he's willing to give Trump more time too.
What most people have said, what I've talked to, they said sometimes things have to get worse to get better.
How long will some farmers cut President Trump a break?
I think they will for forever. So
forever?
Yep, I do. Majority of them. So
that they're in. That that the farmers understand the bigger picture here is what you're telling me.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, this is food we're talking about. We're messing with food to China. That's a very personal thing to people. Farmers have wanted to diversify for years.
Professor Edward Ussett is an expert on commodity markets.
For China, this is really feed for pigs.
That's right. The meat of choice in China is pork, and the way to raise pork is soybean meal and corn.
And Professor Ussett believes, regardless of any deal, the damage from the trade war is long-term.
So you believe China will have some simmering resentment over this tariff battle?
I think it would be normal, yeah. Even if we kiss and make up tomorrow, that's going to have a lingering impact.
Minnesota is the 3rd largest producer of soybeans in the nation. The U.S. exports half its soybeans, the lion's share going to China. But with tariffs, farm exports to China have taken a nosedive, from $19 billion to just $9 billion, and commodity prices have followed suit. Another factor is African swine fever sweeping through China, killing 350 million pigs. An opportunity for Minnesota farmers, or so they thought.
So when African swine fever hit in China originally, we thought we were going to send a lot of pork to China. Well, that market hasn't really materialized.
The thing that I'm hearing from is the strain of the prolonged trade war.
At this year's Farm Fest, the talk was all about China and how long farmers can hold out.
You know, if you're not at the table, you'll be on the menu, and we can't afford to lose trade.
I'm going to address the elephant in the room, the trade agreements.
We're not starting to degrade again. Things are going downhill and downhill very quickly.
And for those farmers hoping to hear reassuring words from Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue,
A cute little joke the other day.
what they got instead was a tone-deaf joke.
a few weeks ago. He said, "What do you call two farmers in a basement?" I said, "I don't know. What do you call them?" He said, "A wine cellar." Farming's been cyclical, and farmers have gone out of business for years. My dad almost was driven out of business in 1954 with a drought. So it happens. It's unfortunate. There's no magic carpet out here for farmers and agriculture.
No magic carpet, but there was a bailout called the Market Facilitation Program. Minnesota farmers received $681 million for the hard times, the third most in the nation. Those payments are capped at $125,000 per farmer. But our analysis of the numbers found 139 large farms and co-ops used various loopholes to exceed the cap. 7 operations got more than $500,000. When it comes to farm subsidies of all kinds, the bigger the operation, the bigger the payment. Need is seldom taken into account.
Are you resentful of what the big guys get? Millions of dollars in farm subsidies.
Again, it's a business, and I don't know if you could ever make it that fair, you know. But the last years, there's more people wanting to get out of it than I've ever heard, because farming, period. Because the economy outside of here is good.
I don't know that I can say I know a farmer out there that says they want another government payment. It's not like we're taking that check to town and going to buy a new pickup. We're using that to cover our cost of production and to keep our operation afloat.
For Brent Fuchs, every year is like roulette, trying to decide when to lock in a price, betting in February what your crop will look like come September.
These pods should already be plump and round.
A lot of people say farmers are victim of their own success, that they just produce more and more and that affects the price. What do you say when people kind of bring that up? I'm sure you've heard people say that.
It's a question I probably struggle with myself. I ask myself sometimes, what are we doing? Because you can't control the weather. You do the best you can to buy your inputs as cheap as you can. What is the only variable you can do to get more dollars at the end of the year? Increase production. The more bushels you can sell, even at a lower price, that's the more dollars per acre you can generate.
The paradox of modern farming is that we produce more food more cheaply than ever before in human history. Yet the price doesn't reflect the true demand or cost of production, leaving farmers like Brent Fuchs going broke, working their way to the poorhouse.
U.S. and Chinese negotiators are still talking. That is the good news. But on Friday, President Trump said he was under no pressure to come up with a piecemeal deal. He wants a comprehensive deal that covers intellectual property theft, currency manipulation, as well as agriculture. Another round of U.S. tariffs will kick in on October 15th. There are high-level negotiations scheduled right before then.
Yeah, but as you point out, time is ticking. The beans are turning brown now, which means they're going to want to harvest them, and where do they go?
We're talking about 2 weeks, and a lot can change in the next 2 weeks for better and for worse.
But it's so important to hear from the farmers who are in the middle of all of this. Your pieces have been really eye-opening.
Yeah, and
more
you
to come,
will.
right?
Absolutely, on Sunday nights.
All right.
You
All
bet.
right. Thanks, Tom.